Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda, Cities ABC and Open Business Council series. We are a fast-growing YouTube and podcast thought leadership channel focused on profiling the global leading inspiring people, CEOs, authors, technologists, academics, and people that are framing and creating a new vision for our world, and especially looking at solutions, how we can actually get better results for the problems that we are facing. In this channel, we've been actually highlighting ideas, products, inventions, software, books, and solutions to the multiple challenges and opportunities we face in our cities and our society. But we face especially, and we actually profile special people that are inspiring, people that are doing fantastic projects, and people that are trying to transform our world with all the areas and all the challenge from fourth industrial revolution to blockchain, AI, and all the frontier technologies that are disrupting and as well accelerating our evolution as humanity. These podcast series are produced and distributed on citiesabc.com and openbusinesscouncil.org and syndicated on intelligenthq.com, fashionabc.org, edgefink.com, and tradersdirect.com, our associate partners and as well media platforms. Today I want to welcome Marcela "LaMarch" Gutierrez, that is the CEO and founder of LaMarch. She's a project manager and a natural networker with more than 10 years of experience working with tech startups and launching new projects. With a deep focus on entrepreneurship, community building, and strategical partnerships, Marcela has been working with governments, the academy, Accelerators, and is especially focused on building relationships that drive growth. She's been collaborating with the organizations such as Google, Mexican National Entrepreneurship Institute, Telefonica, Movistar, LaMarch, Neoris, OXXO, Banorte, Alestra, the Coca-Cola company, and a lot of other organizations that are key and very big corporations worldwide, but as well in Mexico, where she's native. She's a mentor as well of the global Google for Startups network, and the founder of OXXO, a community of women leaders, and a volunteer at Pelican Bay State Prison through Hustle 2.0. And I want to finish with a note that she put that is very beautiful and I really love it. That is, her superpower is understanding human relationships and as well on a deep level and creating meaningful connections. So I hope we'll do that. Welcome to our series, Marcela.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So pleasure is all mine. So you are our first interview from Mexico, so a country I love, but as well from Latin America. So we're going to have, actually tomorrow we have another person, but we suddenly we start going to the continent that I love so much, the Latin America and as well Mexico in particular. So I would like to start precisely from your background. So you are in a wonderful country that has a lot of challenge, but as well a lot of opportunities. And I know that you have quite a wealthy background that touches a lot of different things. I would like to understand that background, that your education, what you did before, and as well from the city where you are right now, but you are in Ciudad de Mexico, and a bit of that background.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I am from Monterrey. Although I did move around a little bit when I was younger, but I studied international business in Monterrey University. And I don't even know, because this is like 13, 15 years ago. So I graduated in 2005. So I don't remember how, because entrepreneurship was not popular at the moment. So I just remember thinking, and my first job was as a kind of like a junior consultant and in a business strategy company. And then I left that work because it was no longer working for me. And I remember having this moment of thinking, okay, what do I want to do next? And I somehow decided I want to work at a business incubator. I don't remember how I got the notion that existed at the moment, but I tried to do that. So I went and I talked to a couple of universities, the one that I studied at, and the other one is Tec de Monterrey, which is the biggest university and probably one of the, not probably, one of the best in Mexico. So I reached out to both of them. I had connections in both. And I ended up working in Tec de Monterrey in a business incubator. And so this was, I was really young and I did not have a lot of experience, and I didn't have any like professional confidence at all because I was just starting. So for me, it was just like learning and learning and learning. And at some point, my boss, the director of the incubator, she was leaving. So I remember this meeting we had when I was planning on asking her, like, what should be my roadmap to become the next director. And on that meeting, she offered me the position. And I didn't feel like I was ready at all, but I figured if she saw it in me, then I had it. So I did that, and I work, and that's how I started working with the advisory board. So that's how I started my journey on working with students and professors and mentors and the board. So that kind of opened my perspective on how to work with different kinds of profiles. From that, I worked with Monterrey's government at the Institute of Technology Transformation and Innovation. And I was the project manager to design the kind of like the model of their nanotechnology incubator so they could access to grants from government. So I did that. And afterwards, I worked at Naranja Lab. So that was the first accelerator program in Monterrey. So that was really fun. And that's actually how I entered the startup world, because before that, I was more focused on kind of like traditional business. So with Naranja, I had like a huge world open to me. And this is on 2013, so not that long ago. And that's how I got involved in the startup world, and I loved it. And I started having more connections with different actors in Mexico City. So I started going to Mexico City a lot. And then at some point, I decided that it was time for me to jump to a bigger pond. So I decided to move to Mexico City. I took myself there. I found myself a job there. And I started working at Centraal, which is one of the first co-working spaces in Mexico, actually, as a country. And probably the first one that did community building as a core of their strategy. So with them, I was in charge of community management, or like managing the relationship with the community leaders. So we would host technology and entrepreneurship meetups every day, and I will enable them. Also, I was the account manager with Google. So this co-working was the first space in Latin America to have an alliance or a partnership with Google for startups. And because of that, and that opened a whole new other world of opportunities, because I connected with these global networks or the best players in their cities. So Techstars and Impact Hub and all of those names that we like Startup Weekend that we recognize, like I would talk to them in a closed space in the annual meeting, which happens on September, I think. So while doing that, I also was in charge of the strategic relationships for the co-working space. So that also gave me the opportunity to talk to fund managers, accelerator managers, people in government, etc. And I kind of became very interested in communities and people. And this is all, of course, accompanied by my personal journey as well. When I think my most characteristic, I don't know, like, the main characteristic of myself is being absolutely curious about a lot of things. So, and I think people is my passion. So I'm very interested about understanding how people, or why do people behave the way they behave, and how the brain works, and how we build connections and all of that. So I think that's the moment when my process or my skills of people understanding kind of like speed up. And after that, I did that for a couple of years. I made a lot of good connections. And after that, I actually fell sick with depression. So this is something that a lot of people don't know about that part of the story, because it looks like I decided to create LaMarch, and that's why I quit my job, but that's actually not the complete truth. The truth. What happened is that I was at that moment surrounded by a couple of toxic relationships that created like it was the perfect storm for me to get sick with depression, and I had to quit my job and go to therapy and take meds and etc. and get well. And after I did, that's how LaMarch was born. So it was funny because I've been working with entrepreneurs my whole life, well, my whole career. And people always ask me like, oh, when are you going to launch your own business or your startup? Like, what's stopping you? And I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. I think I do by now. But at the moment, that was not my expectation or my desire. But when I quit my job and when I got well, people started coming to me to ask me if I could help them with different projects because I had already like an important network. So I started doing like kind of freelance job here and there, and then I realized like, oh, I can do this for a living, and I can be my own boss, and I can pick my projects, and I can work with people that I like and projects that I love. So that's actually how my consultant at LaMarch started, and now I have been doing this for 4 years, and my main focus is in designing and executing programs, events, and trainings for startups, but I also do more tailor-made stuff like designing a mentors network or an open innovation program, or I don't know, just a couple of examples. So I don't know, and this is where I am right now, also trying to launch a new business and more focused on human development.
Wow, that's amazing, and a fantastic spectrum of different things, especially working with both government, startup ecosystems, and as well Google, and as well your personal challenge that actually reboot your career, because sometimes these things happen to make us a difference. So I want to just touch, because of course Mexico is a very exotic country for people outside of Mexico, and it has all this history and a lot of different things. So I want to touch on the personal level, but before going there, so just so you're from Monterrey, then you went to Mexico City, which is one of the leading global megapolis. So I think for someone that never heard and doesn't know anything besides what this is in the news, so would be like some of the highlights between Monterrey, which is a very dynamic, like you mentioned, the biggest university, or at least the best university of Mexico, and Mexico City, which is one of the biggest cities in the planet. So a bit of this background, I think it's quite interesting for people listening to us worldwide, even for me. I always like to know a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they are both very powerful, thriving cities with their different strengths. So Mexico City, what I love about it is the diversity. It's so big, it's so full of opportunities, and it's always like bubbling. There's something cooking all the time. Do you have 22 million people in megalopolis? So it's more for me, my experience, because it's also a city of many realities happening at the same time, right? So I can only talk about my experience, and what I live there is that I was surrounded by ideas. It's more about the ideas and the mindset rather than things, you know? And Monterrey is a very hardworking city. It's the industrial capital of the country, for sure. And it's also recognized as a very entrepreneurial city, but it's more focused on traditional businesses. So more like brick and mortar, and not so much towards technology or high risk technology yet. And I think that this is the moment or the point of inflection in Monterrey right now, what we're seeing right now. So, and they're also very, very proud about their past and their community and their very kind of like regional approach. So all the CEOs, they're friends and they work together. So it's in that sense, I would say it's a kind of close ecosystem. If you compare it to Mexico City, which is like this huge kind of like this airport or this passing route for like everyone from the US and Latin America, right? It's in the middle of everything.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's a massive superpolis and as well megapolis, and as well it has, like you mentioned, a lot of different cities within the city, but as well an ecosystem that is very prevalent. And I know that I know some startups from Mexico and some organizations. People are really very. I think that's the Latin America, is that people are really very nice. It's wonderful culture, although it has, of course, the challenge that from emerging and development and so forth. So I would like to touch right now. So you have a huge background on the Mexico startup world. So I think bearing in mind that Mexico is one of the top economies in the world, even with all the challenges, and as well in terms of scale and capacity, and actually is as well in the top 5 or top 6 countries in terms of world heritage because of all the previous empires and so forth. So how do you see the Mexico business ecosystem and startup world, having so much wealth of experience in this world for the last decade plus, and as well all the experience working both with big corporations like Google? There was actually Google, when it comes to a country, is always a massive corporation because they're so big. And I know that I've been working with Google London and as well Google Nordics. They always normally get the best of any ecosystem. They're very smart on that. But as well, I've been working as well with the government. So you have both the two worlds. So I would like to have a bit of that background from you.
So Mexico's startup ecosystem is, I guess, in its adolescence at the moment, because it kind of started 10, 12 years ago, and there was nothing before that. Like when I was in Monterrey, I didn't hear the word startup at all before the Naranja, before working at the Accelerator. It was all still, we were talking still about business incubators and a more traditional like learning programs or ways to doing business, more traditional, so more like waterfall, nothing like lean methodology or agile, anything like that. So I think that right now there's it's not widespread. I actually have been talking to one of the leaders in the ecosystem, and we're figuring out how can we democratize entrepreneurship. So it's a known or a common topic for people to talk about and to consider as a career path, but we're not there yet. At least not in the startup vision of it, because you see most of the ventures or the businesses that people launch are more traditional businesses like restaurants or things like that. And so right now we start to see some like really good success cases, like Kavak, which is like one of the first unicorns. Argentina is a very well, although they have a lot of challenges, they also have really good technical talent, and they have some really interesting startups or success cases over there. And in Mexico, well, you start to see more of that. And I think that the key, and that's the thing, people ask, how can we move to the next stage? And there are some things that we can do to catalyze and speed up the process, but there are certain things that you just need to go through. And this is kind of like similar of the life of a human being. When you're in your adolescence, yes, you can have like a counselor and you have your parents to guide you or your mentors, whatever. But at the same time, there are some things that you just need to go through to understand and to mature and to be able to do greater stuff. So as an ecosystem, I think that we are on that spot when we start to have more sophisticated entrepreneurs and also more interest in investing, but the investors are also like still learning and maturing. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, makes complete sense. And you're right. For instance, it's interesting because you mentioned 15 years, but even here in London, which is one of the global capitals of technology and business and finance, mostly things start accelerating only in 2011, 2012. So it was the last 9 years, because before that it was very strong. Of course, it's a megapolis as well, and it has a lot of strengths. But it took as well a lot of time, because it was initially a financial and media hub, but it didn't have what it has right now. That was mostly since it was created London Tech City. So this is interesting even to make parallels, because it's a very young ecosystem worldwide. And I think this is a culture that touch, and I think probably I'll do a bridge between this and the personal development, because I think it's particularly interesting, because what I feel is that this is touching probably the most important thing of our times, that is all the areas of how we bridge this kind of new work culture, this way of being in society, and personal development. So as you said, you have a superpower that is understanding human relations, and I really love that. So can you tell us a bit about that? And as well, even put in the connection, because I did recently a fantastic conversation with as well a coach and someone expert in mental health. And for instance, when you look at mental health, normally you only think about the spiritual or the mental, but there's as well the physical, there's as well the ecosystem around us, and as well the economic, social, and emotional. So there's a lot of things mixing, but the superpower that you mentioned is about how you combine all these different things. So I would like to hear about these powers and connecting people, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, for me, I think this interest and this passion came from my personal challenges. So even when I was an adolescent, when I was 16, I have this episode of my life when I don't know if I don't want to go too deep into the subject, but you know about cognitive distortions. That's part of the conductive behavioral therapy. So I had this episode in my life, and I'm not going to talk about what it was because it's not relevant, but I had this misunderstanding that I needed to be a certain way in order for me to be worth of love. So that's like really deep, but also it was a cognitive distortion that was not right, but that's how I understood things. So I spent many years of my life looking for validation and searching for a tribe, because I didn't feel like I belonged in a lot of places or in general society. So that kind of put me in this path of learning about myself and who I was. And throughout all my life, I've been doing all sorts of therapies, meditations, etc. And I think it's amazing what you can learn about the world and about yourself if you decide to engage in this journey. And I guess the biggest challenge was when I felt sick with depression, and that actually faced me with that problem that I had about myself, the relationship with myself, and the sense of worthiness or the lack of it. So I guess trying to understand myself and my place in this planet, that's what led me to read and to practice and to do all these techniques to understand human behavior. And it goes from meditation and DMT to neuroscience and neurolinguistic programming. So it's very wide. And I think it's all parts of the puzzle that help me kind of being always very attentive to the other person as well. Because if I'm feeling this, or if I'm going through this journey, that it's only obvious to think that everyone else is going through a journey of their own. So if you pay attention and if you listen to them, then you can kind of like connect with their essence. If you create a safe space for people to share with you. So even if I don't use those words and I don't talk about my personal beliefs all the time, I try to apply that to my work all the time. So people feel comfortable talking to me. And besides having a business relationship with someone, I always try, and this is only if I like the person. And I usually don't work with, or I don't work with people that I don't like, actually. So I try to create also a personal relationship, because I think that that can, first of all, because I think persons are more important than institutions and than money and than everything else. But the other thing is that it makes things so much easier if you have a personal connection with the person, because then they understand that you're there to help you, to help them, and not just to make business. You're on their side. So I guess, I don't know if that explains a little bit my perspective.
I love it, because it's quite interesting, because I have a lot of friends from all over the world, and I know that this part of personal development is very complex according to the culture, but according as well to the way you see society. And I think you touch a lot of different areas, from the personal development, from the emotional and mental part, and then as well there's the way you interact with people. For instance, I remember I worked with a big organization, and it was actually in Scandinavia, and we had like around 30 countries or 40 countries all in the same room. And if you would go through the room, you would see the different culture changing, because it was a massive room, of course, it's a big company. But what was interesting is seeing the different cultures, and how from the voice, from the tone, and different things we interact with each other. But then, like you mentioned, and for me it's very interesting, is the personal connections. And as a CEO and as a thought leader, or actually as a teacher, I've been 3 hats. This is quite complex, because for instance, if you are connecting with someone on the Nordics, you have a different kind of connection that you have from someone from Latin America, someone from Africa. There's a lot of nuances, but in the end of the day, it's all about human relationships. But I would like to touch, so from your experience as well, working with the corporate, startup world and institutional world, and as well more even social impact world, because you've been as well doing a lot of work on that area. How do you see this connection? Because sometimes people tend to separate personal and business. And when they mix this, sometimes things become a bit blurred, because it's difficult to do it. But I know that Latin America managed that a bit better. So I would like to hear a bit about your experience on that, and how do you see that as well, for someone that has quite a lot of experience as well, mentoring and working on startups, accelerators, and corporations.
Well, I guess the connecting point of all of those is humanity. We're all humans. And I don't understand when they sell this business coaching versus life coach or personal coach, and they try to solve something, but the source of all the energy and the power is the same bag of resources, which is the person, right? So sometimes you're trying to solve something in your business, but it might be like some self-confidence issue. Not all the times, and maybe like you actually do need like a business methodology to solve something, but then that's not coaching, that's just learning, right? I mean, that's just a point of view. So in my experience, there are some people that are actually not willing to connect in a deep way, and that's okay, because understanding that and reading that on them lets you know how they are protecting themselves or how they see themselves. So part of respecting them and honoring them is playing on their field. But if you see a window, then you can kind of break through it, and I've done it many times. So even with, and also the thing is that you don't know. And when you and I met a couple of weeks ago, like I had no idea that we had this interest in common. And the more that I talk about myself, I mean, not about myself, but about my interest, and I allow myself to be authentic with others, the more I realize that people are lacking this connection. And when you talk about that, like their eyes open and they're like, yes, tell me more, I want to do that. Because we all need it. But we have different challenges and triggers.
Yeah, it's very complicated. And as well, one of the things especially that I struggle, and I would like to have your opinion on that, because I think this is really a very, very powerful topic, because I think business I think special right now with COVID, it's more difficult than ever because, for instance, our team is distributed worldwide. I'm sure that you as well, because of COVID, cannot meet even friends and a lot of different people. And I think it creates a more difficult perception. First of all, our relationships interact. First, one of the things I try to tell my team is, if you are in a meeting, please make sure that you put the camera, because I know that you might be in pajama or at least something, but find a way at least because if you don't see the person, and for instance, this is in some ways, in some cultures and some personalities, you can actually hurt someone because not just showing something, not listening, not understanding. And this is very complex because people have their children at home. Not everyone has a big house. There's noises. There's a lot of different things. For example, I was having a meeting with someone from the government of a country, and the person had their daughter on her neck. It was very sweet, but it's the kind of things that is kind of making humanizing work, but at the same time it's highlighting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I believe are the good side of the pandemic, if there's any, and that's that it kind of made it very clear that we are all human, and that we are in our homes with, like, I've seen very sophisticated clients like petting their cats at home, right? So that gives them a human side. And I think framing is important. So it's not the same if I start a meeting and I just ask everyone to put their cameras on, versus if I give like a little introduction and like we're talking right now, and I say like, okay guys, I understand that these are difficult times, that you might not have the best space, but we're trying to connect here. So we want to look at your faces. We want to feel closer to you. And not everyone, not every call or every meeting needs like a virtual call. We can just like have, because I think people are also like abusing that tool. And then it kind of becomes meaningless when you actually need to connect them to see the person. So also pick. But if you frame things, it's about storytelling. If you convince people why this is a good idea, then it's easier to do.
No, I think it's the most important thing. And it's very important as well, because I think especially, for instance, a lot of accelerators right now are having their work remotely or digital, because it's difficult as well to have even people face to face. So I think just highlights the importance of personal development, because sometimes there are people that are very shy, there are people, so this highlights a lot of different personality traits. And this brings me to the work you've been doing, that I'm quite excited, and I respect a lot that part, because I always want to do more on that because of my background, and as well my sensibility for these areas, but it's not easy. So you've been working in XX, that is a community of women leaders, and at the same time a volunteer at the Pelican Bay State Prison through OXXO 2.0. So can you tell us about this? Because this is a very sensitive area and very hardcore. And this, and here you not only need to be very strong and consistent in terms of personal development and being well with yourself, but as well you have to have a very power, because you're dealing with people, because sometimes we tend to think that we are suffering a lot, but these people are suffering. We're very lucky people, and most of us, at least the ones listening to us. I would like to hear a bit about this experience.
Yeah, and suffering is real for everyone, but we can also modify how we experience suffer. So it's not to invalidate your suffering. It's about how you can reframe that into something different, right? It's about storytelling as well, and narrative. So OXXO 2.0 is the best thing probably that has happened. Not the best thing, but maybe one of the best, at least the best experience for sure. So I think it was in 2016 that, because of the Google for Startup Network, I was invited to their annual meeting of partners in San Francisco. And the keynote speaker was Catherine Hoke, and she's the founder of OXXO 2.0. This is the third program that she creates to help incarcerated people. So back then, the program that she was leading was the 5 Ventures, which still exists. And she was the keynote speaker, and she talked about giving second chances. And she opens her conferences with this question, and is how would you feel, or how would your life be if people only knew you for the worst thing you've done? So I think that's very powerful, because you could be a cheater, you could be a liar, you could be a thief, you could be a dog killer, you could be a person killer maybe. And that doesn't define who you are. And certainly it doesn't define your future. It's your past, it's what you did, and it's one action or maybe a couple of actions that you did, but we always have the opportunity to change. So just of watching that presentation, I was absolutely impressed. So I kept in touch with them. And 1 year after, I brought Catherine to Mexico at Mexico's Entrepreneurship Week as a speaker, because one of the premises is that people with criminal history are actually natural entrepreneurs. They're natural hustlers. They're just focused on illegal ventures, but they have all the skills, right? So they do pitch competitions, kind of like Shark Tank format competitions, etc. So when I brought Kat and we met in person and we talked, I was absolutely fascinated about her work. And she invited me to go to one of the prisons. And I was like, yeah, sure. And and she told me, oh, the next gathering is in Pelican Bay, which is my favorite prison, because this is a super max. This is a level 4 prison, which is the top that you can get in American system. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there. So 2 months after that, I was in prison with a bunch of strangers. And then my healing process began. Actually, I managed to solve one of my biggest issues, which was that, like the sense of worth. With also other things, because it's a lot of work. But to see these persons that have a criminal past or a criminal history, and that understanding my privilege and that kind of like the extremes in the world, and you know, society loves narratives. So there's this narrative about the bad guys and the good guys, and we the good guys are free and around and doing stuff, and then the bad guys belong in prison, and we're safe and we're doing good because they're there and we're here. And we have this corresponsibility with them, because we as society create those gaps and those risks for them. So these guys come from very poor communities with violence, with drugs, with gangs, with abuse. And a lot of them enroll into this path when they are kids. And so they pretty much join the gangs to protect themselves, to keep themselves alive. And then one thing led to the other, and then you find these persons that are in prison and they don't know anything else to do, because all they've experienced is aggression. So I don't know, I could talk about this for hours, but for me, the main lesson from this experience is that we are all correlated. We all have a co-responsibility with others. It's not that because we are paying our taxes, like it goes beyond that. And you can decide, there are many causes, like you don't have to go to prison, you don't have to donate to this cause, but what's something that calls you? Is it helping like dogs on the street? Is it kids with cancer? Like, how are you transcending besides doing your job? Because like that's what we do to eat. But our human experience is way more than that. And when we start giving and connecting with others and transcending to helping, I think that's the beginning of the journey, actually.
No, it's very inspiring, but as well very intense as well. So how do you cope with the intensity of this? Because I think, like you mentioned, is this capacity of healing, and as you mentioned, most of these people are actually very successful as well entrepreneurs. There's a lot of cases of people that, like you said, you cannot be defined for what you did, and I think that's one of the wonderful things in the U.S. economy, at least, that integrates entrepreneurs and gives them an opportunity. Which I know that sometimes in Europe, if you have the stigma that you fail, you get the stigma for the rest of your life, and that's a kind of a big thing in some cultures. Just a bit of that background, because I think that is very interesting for us. Yeah.
How to cope with the intensity of it? Well, to be honest, this program is the best program that I've seen in my life. And I say that from the point of view of someone who works designing programs. So I'm not talking just about the curricula, which is really important, and they graduate with a degree of university, Banorte University in Texas. But they also provide all these intelligence, emotional intelligence support and forgiveness, and how to reconnect with their families, and a bunch of stuff. But what they learn, we get to learn as volunteers as well. So the project, the program, this is a 1-year program, and the volunteers, and I don't know how it's going to be after COVID, but before we used to be 3 times. We used to go there to the prison, and this is in California, really, it's in Crescent City. So we would go at the beginning for the kickoff of the program, then the midterm to give them coaching and be with them, and then the graduation, where they actually like graduate with the gown and the hat and everything. And for me, the way to cope with it, and the program during the weekends that we go there, they call it the worm. So they take us on a journey that is ups and downs. So you can have like a very, there's the hardest and most emotional part of it is an exercise called the step to the line. So, and this exercise is about recognizing our privilege, our similarities, our differences, and most of all, the basic need that we all have, which is to be able to love, to be loved, and to forgive and be forgiven. So yes, I've cried many times. Like, you know, when you go there, you know you're going to cry, but you're also going to feel so fulfilled and happy. And we dance with them and we play with them. It's actually not a sad experience in general. There are sad aspects of it, of course, because they cannot leave. You go and then you have a beer with your friends and they stay there, and that's actually what hurts me the most, or what kills me. And when we leave and we go and the volunteers, we go and have dinner, and they go to their cells, and that's really hard for me too. But at the same time, the people in there, they are creating change within themselves. So they're free in their mind and their souls, and that's the most important thing they can do. So I know that they are on a healing process, and that's how I cope with it, because I know that we are all healing together.
Yeah, and I think that is a very important, especially the last years we've been going through a very nasty kind of, I'm not going to geopolitics, but I think a lot of nasty society things. And one of the things, and I want to touch that a bit because you touch on this, and I think we're going a bit on this direction, but I think it's a very interesting area. So we have definitely like 2 parts of society. One part of society that looks as this personal development and this society integration, and part of the society that is kind of not trying to look at this. And I know especially in the United States is becoming more and more violent. There's really people that don't want to see the people that are suffering. They really want to create a wall around them and so forth. And this happens in some countries, but I've been seeing in the United States has been particularly more tricky. But I know in some parts of the world it happens. But I think COVID has been disrupting all of this. So how do you see all this dialectics? Because for me and for you, and I'm very emotional with what you're doing, and as well I respect it a lot. But I know that for some people this is never a priority, and that's why we have so much inequality. We have actually all this wealth, but a massive inequality as well. So how do you cope with that, especially in a country like Mexico that has as well a massive amount of paradoxes in a lot of ways?
I curate what I read or what happens on my social media a lot. So I don't want to learn anything about politics, and that's not because I don't care. It's because I don't choose that as my the way that I can create an impact in the world. So I just work in the areas that interest me or that I decided to be my causes. So I am aware about topics on gender equality or mass incarceration, but I don't read about everything because then, and I'm a very sensitive person, as you can imagine. So I try to be very protective of my mind and my thoughts. So I surround with people I surround myself with like-minded people with kindness. For me, it's like the biggest like personality trait that someone can have. So I try to be kind to myself as well. And when I see someone that is not maybe aware or doesn't want to be aware of these inequalities, I kind of gently try to bring the subject sometimes, kind of like just to challenge them. But at the same time, I think that there's people that are not willing to change, and that's okay. That's their journey. I don't think that we are all here to do the same and to learn the same. So also it's kind of like going with the flow and let things take their course. And at the same time, find the ways that you can create an impact and go with that, work with the people that want to create change. Like, I don't want to be fighting and convincing the ones that don't want to be convinced.
Yeah, it's a very strong line that we need to see where to go or not to go. So, well, it's been a fantastic journey. And I have a lot of other questions, but I probably will wrap up. I don't want to go too much as well, because I know that it's a very sensitive thing, but it's very interesting. So last question, and try to position a bit more of hope as well. And I think it's all about hope. This interview has been very wonderful. So one of the things is, I know that we are among COVID, and Mexico has been quite affected. I think everyone in the world, but Mexico in particular as well, here in the UK. So how do you see, and especially being in the startup world, which is a digital world, how do you see all these good things that we build on the startup world, on the digital world, passing to the rest of society, especially as ways of redesigning society with COVID 5.0? So I'd like to, what with the COVID and with the society 5.0?
Probably one of the things that I like most about the startup mindset is the ability to experiment and not think about failure, but more like how to experiment and prove things, prove what works and learn from what doesn't work. So that applies to everything: COVID, no COVID, business, no business, to remove those the shackles of failure from your mind, and be willing and learning how to do it in a cheap way, because there's also this mistake of thinking that you need to go big and go all the way to see if something works or not. And there are so much other ways to do things: small, cheap, fast, and then you can learn about that little thing that you wanted to prove, and then you can advance. So in terms of COVID, and I've been doing it with my life, with my personal life during COVID. So it's just like, okay, I want to cook and I don't know how to cook. Okay, how can I do it easy? Okay, this YouTube channel that I like. Okay, then I did it and I didn't like that there were too many ingredients. So for the next time, I'm going to look to another channel that uses less ingredients. And this is a really dumb example, but it's things like that. Like, if you want to change something in your life, just gather a little information. There's internet that everything is available on internet, and then just make little steps towards it.
Yeah, I love that, and it's a great way to wrap up, and I know that you're limited in time. So thank you so much, Marcela. It's been a wonderful and very inspiring and emotional in a good way. And I wish you all the best. I'm sure we're going to be having more other opportunities. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and I hope it was helpful in any way.
It was. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, well, looking forward to keep talking to you. So thank you so much, and have a good day.